the idea behind this study is that it's really important that people, particularly music educators, know how to listen to popular music, figure out the chord progressions. And we start looking at research of Lucy Green and informal music learning. A large part of that is self-directed student activities. And there's nothing more awkward than when a student comes up to a teacher and says, hey, can you teach me how to play that Killer song? And the teacher can't feel that at all because they're not really up on this idea of picking out chord progressions, understanding harmony, and how chords are functioning within the key. So we are looking at how this skill of figuring out chords and progressions is assessed. And there's NASM accreditation, but the way that it talks about your training, particularly this skill about figuring out chord progression of popular songs, it's not really addressed. It's not among the millions of other things that are covered in the year training courses. This is not really something that's honed in on. The praxis doesn't really provide any of these other types of listening exercises. No examples on a praxis where they're giving you a Killer song or a Green Day and they're saying what's the chord progression there. But again, this is something that if you are a formal music teacher, if your teacher teaches formal music learning, is something that you should really be up on. And so it's really left up to the degree granting institution, and in particular the year training courses, to make sure that people are leaving the school with this skill. But again, among all the things that they have to teach, ascending tritones, descending minor sixes, them ensuring that you are able to pick out the progression of a yes song is probably not on their main agenda of things that they're going to cover. So it turns out that some musicians tend to do this better than others. In particular, people who are afforded experience of working with polyphony, people who play chordal instruments, and generally have more experiences working with polyphony tend to understand how that is better. And we know from being in bands that for us to put on a YouTube video and figure out the chords is something that we're doing all the time. For someone who plays a monophonic instrument or sings, might not really be something that they're doing a whole lot of. So I did this study just as a basic survey of undergraduate and graduate students, and I wanted to find out, this was a preliminary study, just to find out what are people's perceptions about this skill, figuring out chord progressions and whatnot. It turns out people did feel that that was something that wasn't covered, and that there was room in their degree program to explore, to learn more about this type of thing. That was something that people who felt that they did do that and did do that well felt it was something that they picked up before college, or something they kind of picked up outside of college. So it's something that we weren't really doing. Again, the idea behind how we remediate that experience, if you feel like you're not up on these skills, well, what are you going to do to get better at that? If you play guitar or piano, it's expected that if you listen to popular music, you're going to get better at figuring out the chords and figuring out the patterns of these things. But what happens if you're a vocalist? You're not can't sing chords with your voice. So what do we typically do? We say then we'll go learn the piano, and in undergraduate music degrees, you always take piano courses. So go learn piano and figure out the chords that way. Go learn guitar and figure out the chords that way. But that's not exactly the best approach, because if it's an instrument they're not really comfortable playing, then they tend to they could spend more time trying to figure out how to play the chords and how to figure out these the right voicings and these types of things than they do spend on focusing on what is the progression I'm trying to hear. So if you were trying to decipher, is it a 1, 5, 6, 4 progression in some key, and you're spending so much time trying to get the mechanics of playing a 1, 5, 6, 4, you're not really focusing attention on playing the chord progression or listening to the chord progression. So that's not exactly a win. In particular, piano courses that are taught at the undergraduate level are not taught in the context of let's learn piano so that you can decipher, so you can do these types of ear training tasks. They're taught more so basic skills, you can play through some pieces, but it's not really in this emphasis of let's teach you how to play piano so that you can accomplish this sort of oral skills task. Right? So interactive music systems becomes an interesting part of this whole topic. because now with technology, we can develop instruments that function for a specific task, whereas in the past, instrument design was based on acoustics and really getting the most efficiency in terms of volume, timbre, tone control. The acoustic instruments were designed for these types of things. Also physical efficiency. Now with technology, we can design systems that are geared toward a task, a specific operation. And so I've done a bunch of different projects. This is one that's called Amir. And the idea behind this project was that they're all sort of interactive, sensor-controlled systems where people can use software to play diatonic pitches and whatnot. So here we have somebody playing on a graphics tablet, and the graphics tablet itself is mapped to diatonic pitches. Different lasers are tracking pitches, and again, mapping them to a key. So they give range levels, of course. So again, the idea is that you would take some instrument that's accessible, very accessible, and design software that is geared toward a particular task, as opposed to just a software instrument for software instrument's sake. You say the goal of today's activity is going to be that we're going to learn about chords, we're going to learn about a certain scale, and here's a software interface with a very accessible, easy to use control interface, and here's the task that we're going to do. This how this instrument is going to work well with that. In fact, I did a study with a buddy of mine, Rick Dammers from Rowan. It's called the Interactive Music Technology Curriculum Project. That was the title we gave it, or IMTCP. And the whole goal of the project was sort of summer camp based. We did a week-long music camp for non-musicians, and the goal was we're going to use technology to get kids performing and composing, and performing original works, but also standard pop songs that they liked. But we're going to get them doing that without using traditional instruments. So we didn't expect these kids to know anything about music, and the idea is that we're going to hit the ground running and using interfaces that were very accessible. Instead of spending a long time showing them, here's the chord shape on a guitar, or here's what a triad looks like on a keyboard or something like that, we're just going to design software that gets them to the basics of, here are the diatonic chord functions in some key. Let's start playing some music, and let's start hearing what these patterns sound like. We used particular software. In fact, this is what the sheet music looked like for these things. So this is a song by Akon, and the idea was that you would see, obviously, diatonic chord functions, 1, 5, 6, 4, with some beats underneath it, so you can kind of count along with it. And then you would use this software instrument, which I'll show you in a little bit, that instead of playing a 1, 5, 6, 4 on a guitar or a keyboard, you would press the number 1 through 8 on a computer keyboard. So if you want to hear what a 1, 5, 6, 4 sounds like, just press literally the numbers 1, 5, 6, and 4 in some key that you choose from a menu, and then you're set. So we made all sorts of sheets like this for a bunch of songs that the students said they liked. And that was great, because then they were playing these songs using this sort of notation, and they're immediately hearing a 1, 5, 6, 4. I really like the way that Akon used that, as opposed to the way that Aerosmith used it in the song. And then they would make their own compositions sort of based on these same types of ideas. So it brings us to this study, where I want to do similar things with the software, but also for the purpose of observing how these systems could improve people's abilities to understand chord progressions in particular. One of the things I wanted to do is examine the extent of software instrument, that the software instrument can assist in doing this, and also really compare it to the way that we do this with traditional instruments. Right? So participants in the study were 67 undergrad music majors. There were 2 groups, control group and experimental group. They were randomly formed. The groups were tested. I'll show you, I did a qualifying test to find out sort of profile information about students' backgrounds, how many semesters of theory they had before high school, what their instruments were, what their experiences were playing polyphonic instruments, also monophonic instruments. And I wanted to make sure that there were no differences between the control group and experimental group. And I did that based on background information. So if you played guitar for 3 or 4 years prior to college, you're in the polyphonic group. If you had only played a monophonic instrument prior to college or in a monophonic group. And so there are different strategies there, which we read about. There was a pretest. It was a pretest post-test study. The pretest survey asked some self-assessment questions about people's current skills in terms of figuring out chord progressions. How comfortable are you hearing a pop song on the radio and figuring out the chord progressions? How do you feel your skills are in music theory, oral skills, these types of things, where people were asked to rate their own abilities on a Likert scale. And then there were excerpts, 10 questions, where I had popular songs, the chorus or the verse that was in a particular progression, and it was quiz style. It was select the proper progression or the correct progression from the list. And so you would hear the chorus to a Boston tune or something like that, and it would be in a 1-5-6-4 or so, and you would select which one you think it was, or I don't know. The progressions I focused on for this study were a 1-5-6-4, 6-4-1-5, a 1-4-6-5, a 1-6-4-5, and a 1-4-6-5. I think that was it. That was all 5. Yeah. There were experimental group activities. They were the ones using this particular software, as opposed to the control group, which used a traditional instrument. They worked through these activities I had for 6 weeks, about an hour and a half to 2 hours each week. And I'll show you, there's a video demonstrating what it is, but I'll show you kind of what the software does. I don't think I did that during the preliminary defense. But this was the app that they had. It runs Mac or PC. I'll just show you quickly so you can see what it looks like. It was all self-contained. So they would open up this app each week, and you can see that the activities are sort of labeled by week. So there's a basic introduction where they tell you about how the software works, and in essence, I'm playing the number of keys on my keyboard right now, and so it's playing a 1-5-6-4. And there's a demo video here too, in case they got stuck with how to do it, but it's all self-contained. And the idea is that you would select a key or whatever, and really the software does it for you, but you can swap keys and whatnot. So for week 1, the activities focused on hearing this 1-5-6-4 progression. So there's a little bit of narrative here in case they were not up on this, but generally undergraduate music majors are all familiar with at least the notion that chords are built from scale degrees. And so the idea is that they would work through activities. So here's a song to play. This is One Day by Yahoo, and the software in this case pops them into the right key, and it pops them into the right timbre too at the in this thing. So if they wanted to practice playing through this song, they can read through it like that, and then when they're feeling good and they've read through the whole song, it's got the lyrics there obviously, you can play along with the software. So here's the actual track embedded in there, and then I can play on top of it, right? And then if I want to have less of the recording, I can do that too. Just focus on my skills. So the idea is that they would then practice these songs using this software, and it's all self-contained. And different activities for each week. Lots of songs, all popular songs from 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, really up until 2011. That was where it kind of cut off. But there were activities that involve like analysis as well. So here's any way you want it, and so you would like listen to the song, like any way you want it, that's the way you need it. And then you can of course go in here and it puts you in the right key as Jordy's song, and then kind of just play through the chords, and then once you feel like you've written it down, you've got the basic gist of it, you can go here and you can get the basic right progression of how this thing cooks. Cool. And there were some analysis ones too, if you wanted to name that progression. So you know. So I don't want to hear the rest of that, but you get the so it's a 1, 5, 6, 4, I think, and then yes, in fact it is. So those were the control group, or the experimental group activities, all spanning, again, 6 weeks, and each one is focusing on different types of progressions to work on, and obviously songs that fit that progression. The control group had similar activities, except they didn't involve the software. So they had a URL to a website, which they were basically the same things, and they saw the same songs, but instead of being, you can't play the chords with the keyboard. So the idea is when they see Modest Yahoo, they have to click here and then play the MP3, right? And so then they would be having to play this on a keyboard or guitar, the traditional way that we would do it. Okay, sure. So, so there's the activities there. Then there's obviously a post-test where they listen to the 10 songs again, and self-assessment questions like before. So, results. Self-assessment questions. For the question, please rate your current skills regarding your ability to, by ear, determine the chord progressions. No statistical difference there, nothing to report. In fact, for the self-assessment questions, no statistical difference for these. Please rate your current skills, music theory. However, so those are self-assessment questions, but I will move to the progression scores because there was a 15% improvement in the ability of the experimental group to identify, at least in this case, the 1, 5, 6, 4 progression. Interesting because there was not the same improvement in the control group. There was no improvement in the control group scores. There was 15% improvement in the experimental group scores for this progression. And for the 6, 4, 1, 5 progression, there was a 19% improvement in the experimental group. And again, no improvement in the control group scores there. There were these extension questions on the post-test, and really talking more about the software or the traditional instrument and how that affected or helped, aided to some degree, their ability to complete these activities. And there was a statistically significant correlation here. For 2 of these 3 questions, to what extent do you feel that your ability to determine chord progression has improved? And there was a statistical significance here. For example, mixed, obviously. For example, 58.82% the participants in the experimental group reported a moderate extent of improvement, while 30.30% of the control group participants responded the same. So obviously there were some mixes in terms of what went up and what went down in the group, but the association is significant. The second extension question was, to what extent do you feel that using the software instrument, or in the control group case, the accompanying instrument, helped you determine progressions? This was not statistically significant. The third extension question, to what extent do you feel you would have been able to complete the same activities, determining chord progressions, to the same degree of success without the aid of the software or the accompanying instrument? There was a statistical significant difference there. And again, mixed. 21% of control group participants responded not at all, while 0% of experimental group participants responded the same. So again, mixed bags there. And then there was an open-ended question where participants were encouraged to give their comments about the whole study or any part of it at all. And this was actually very interesting too. I feel like the software didn't offer strategies for determining chord progressions, and instead had the user repetitiously experiment with the chord progressions, hoping that the repetition would cause the progression to stick in the user's memory. So what I found is that some people either really, really liked the software, or some people really hated it too. The comments were definitely interesting in that capacity. Let me get to this one. Here's an example of someone who loved it. It's so cool and greatly beneficial. I learned the chords extremely fast because of the software. I feel it helped me more than me actually sitting in a classroom and learning this from a teacher. This is a little dig for academia. Yeah. I feel that this method would convey basic music theory much easier to the lay listener seems like it'd be very useful for all scholastic levels. So those were comments from the experimental group. Here's an interesting one from the control group. Because I'm not all that good at piano for a while, I spent the time trying to get the chords. So basically I spent this time practicing technical things, which left me less time to really think about the sounds. I can hear huge chord changes now, which is a huge improvement. I can hear chord changes now, which is a huge improvement for me. I'd like to continue the exercise to see if I can better identify the chords with more practice. And this is great, because this gets right at the core of what I was saying, what I was thinking, which was, again, you're spending so much time focusing on playing on the mechanical things that there's no separation between physical stuff and the cognitive process. But with a technology-based instrument, you could be one step closer towards separating those two things so that they're technology instruments for a very specific purpose.